If I had a nickel for every time that a video game on the PC Engine was a trip through the afterlife, I'd have 2 nickels, which tells me that I should have asked for more money for each of those trips. Taito's Jigoku Meguri, or A Tour of Hell, is very transparently influenced by Namco's Yokai Dochuki, though not as weirdly complicated as that one. Originally, this was an arcade game, and that version was released internationally as Bonze Adventure, Bonze being an archaic term for a Buddhist monk. The arcade game doesn't seem to have been especially popular, or at least it barely made the charts when it was released, so it doesn't seem to have an especially strong following. However, we still have this PC Engine version. The plot of the game is that King Enma, ruler of the underworld, has gone mad, and for some reason, you've been chosen to go beat him up and put him back on the right path. Jigoku Meguri is a side-scrolling action game consisting of 7 stages. Your monk is extremely fragile, and any contact with anything that even looks at him funny will kill him instantly. However, you are not unarmed. Pressing button 2 will throw a bead, and this bead will bounce a few times before it breaks, assuming it doesn't hit an enemy first. Besides its usefulness as an offensive weapon, the bead will reveal power-ups and hidden items on every stage. Almost everything that you collect in Jigoku Meguri is a power-up, and what appears in locations is heavily randomized. As a rule of thumb, if it's sitting out in the open, then it's not randomized, and if you have to make it appear, then it is randomized. There are so many hidden items, though, that you'll very quickly become fully powered up. You don't lose your power-ups when you die or continue, so the only way that you'd notice many of the effects of these items is if you started a new game. The most important item to collect are the orbs. They come in 3 colors, red, green, and purple. Sometimes you can make them flip back and forth between 2 colors by shooting them, but other times they're permanently one color. Collecting one will change the orb that the monk fires to match that color, and it increases the size of that color orb by 1 level. As you keep collecting these power-ups, the orb can get to be very large. The size for each color is tracked, so if you only collected red orbs and made a really giant bullet, and then grabbed a green orb, it would shrink down to that first level of green orb attack, but then collecting another red orb would put you right back at the giant one. The difference between these orbs is not, as you might expect, the damage they do or special effects attached to them. It's the special attack that you can do by pressing down and button 2. Doing this will shrink your attack by 1 level, and if you are at the lowest point, then you'd return to the beginning blue orb. For the special attacks, they have to hit an enemy or bounce around until they stop moving, and then the effect occurs. Red releases a wave of fire that shoots left and right. Green releases an explosion of bullets. And purple is a lightning strike that destroys everything on the screen. That means that the purple orb is very obviously the best one to collect. Red doesn't have enough coverage, green has gaps, but purple just kills everything. Because the special attacks require striking an enemy first or having the orb stop bouncing, their use winds up being very situational. They're not reliable attacks unless the situation is just right. In fact, in most cases, I'd prefer to have the giant orb than the special attack. The big exception is for dealing with aerial enemies, since the special attacks are the only way that you can attack above you. Well, unless you're using the red one. In that case, it doesn't attack anything above you anyways. As for the other power-ups, the Chain of Prayer beads adds to the number of shots you can fire simultaneously. That one caps out at 3. And the Magatama, or the little stone that looks like a comma, causes your shots to bounce an additional time. Finding a mirror will make you invincible for a short period, and the dolls act as 1-ups. There are 7 stages in Jigoku Meguri, and as you might expect from the title, each level after the first one guides you through some traditional aspect of hell. You have to go through the graveyard on stage 1 to get there, though. Most of the stages feature some kind of branching path. Usually it's just a high road and a low road, but there's a few places where the splits act as entirely different stages. Every stage ends with you reaching a little Jinzo statue and then just moving on. There's only 2 bosses in the game, one at the very end and one at the end of stage 3. In Japan, Jigoku Meguri seems to get a collective shrug. There are some people who like it, mainly for the graphics and game concept, but other people talk about the mediocre gameplay. Maybe the most damning statement comes from its own creators, who refer to the game as boring. This is a situation where I think that a video doesn't really convey the worst aspects of Jigoku Meguri. Visually, you can see an okay-ish platformer. Not the most stylish game ever, but functional. But when you play it, you feel how sluggish the movement is, how annoying the platforming is, how climbing ladders and jumping between them just feels off. Enemy patterns also feel, well, they're not really inconsistent, they're just non-obvious. Will they turn around when they reach an edge or walk back? Will they fall through here or just keep going? Will it bounce high into the air or stay low? There's enough variation between enemies that you don't have a really clear idea of how something is going to behave when you initially encounter it, and sometimes after you encounter it multiple times. And your monk is so fragile that any mistake is a big setback. You're given 3 credits when you start the game, which means you have a total of 9 lives, and you will burn through those incredibly fast. It almost feels like they set this game up to combat the rental market, but that didn't exist in Japan, so Jigoku Meguri is in a situation where it's not truly dire, but there's also nothing here to really recommend it. It's just one of those games that'll fade into the background and be forgotten.